New Fury Media presents Rumble vs. the Airwaves, a music, nostalgia, gaming, and culture podcast. I'm Tim, and here's Rumble.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of Rumble vs. the Airwaves. On today's show, we're chatting with Aaron Marshall from Intervals. We're going to talk about what's going on in pop culture that's got our attention. We're going to move over to the Discovery with Southwest Florida punk band Neverless. And on This Week for DIY or Die, we're talking to Will Birdwell about one of the greatest tools for today's DIY creator. What's up, Tim?
What's going on, Rumble?
Not much. So this is kind of old news, but did you see that documentary about We Are the World?
Yes, you've been telling me to watch it, and I finally watched it.
I have been telling you to watch it. It's called The Greatest Night in Pop, and it's on Netflix. And what did you think?
I thought it was amazing. I did not realize how much went into the whole process of doing it.
Yeah, I wasn't around when it was made, so I don't really like it. It never really felt like such a big production until I watched it. Like I didn't realize the sheer magnitude of how many people were there and how late they had to be there because the AMAs and everything.
Yeah, I had no idea all that went into it. Like
Yeah.
you were saying, the AMAs, they didn't start till way later in the night.
Yeah.
And went until after 7 a.m.
And Lionel Richie performed at the AMAs and received multiple awards that night.
Yeah, and he pretty much kind of running everything,
yeah, orchestrating it.
Yeah.
Him and Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson all kind of orchestrated everything.
Yeah.
A lot of great stories came out of it, too. I remember there was this interview recently, Howard Stern and Billy Joel were talking about it, and they were talking about the documentary. And Billy Joel was telling this story about how like everyone was singing in the choir during that chorus part, but him and Springsteen were off in the corner eating sandwiches. They were complimentary sandwiches, and they were off in the corner. Another one of my favorite parts of it was like Stevie Wonder helping Bob Dylan sing like Bob Dylan.
Yes.
Was really funny.
That was very emotional for me because like you could see how vulnerable Dylan was.
Oh, for sure.
And then once he like let it go, I was like, dude.
It sounded great, yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought Stevie Wonder doing a Bob Dylan impression was really funny.
Nailed it.
Oh, absolutely. It sounded great. What were some of your favorite parts?
I like seeing more about Huey Lewis.
Oh, yeah. Dude, he's a great singer.
Yeah, I didn't realize he originally was not supposed to be like one of the main solo singers, and then Prince didn't show up.
Yeah.
So thank you, Prince, wherever you may be.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Prince, for not showing up.
He did great, and he shined in it, and like, especially now, can't sing anymore.
Oh, yeah.
It was nice to hear about it.
For sure. Yeah, Huey Lewis and the News is one of my favorite bands from that 80s pop rock scene.
Absolutely.
All right, let's hop over to our interview with Aaron Marshall. What's up, Aaron? Thanks for being on the show.
How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Of course, man. As of the time this is airing, I believe you will be in LA on your tour with Hail the Sun.
Yes, in the future, living in the future. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll be at the Echoplex in Los Angeles, and then the House of Blues Anaheim the following day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us about the tour, man. How did this all come together?
Yeah. So we were on tour at the end of last year. We were direct support to Tesseract across North America, and did a really awesome year of touring last year. Earlier in the spring, we were first of 3 on a tour with Spirit Box. It was Intervals, Spirit Box. We were kind of looking forward to 2024 and asking ourselves, do we want to fall back? Do we want to hit again? What do we want to do? And there's new music in the pipeline and got lots on the go. So we were sort of looking at some options for touring in the early spring. A co-headliner, and particularly with Hail, doing something with Hail the Sun is actually something that's kind of been on our radar for a little while. Friendly with those guys, and no Donovan for a while, and timing looked good on this actually. So we sort of decided that we usually release new music from a vacuum. We tend to go away off the road for a while and make a record and then kind of promote and roll it out, then go on tour and get a temperature check. But we've never really kind of like mixed it up and toured as sort of like a traveling commercial for new music, so to speak. So we decided, let's roll new music out and be on the road at the same time. Kind of a new approach for us. And we're looking at what our options are for the time frame. And, Hail the Sun wanted to jump in the saddle, and a co-headliner sounded like a really fun thing to do. And they just had a really successful tour at the end of last year as well. And it was a great opportunity to, jump in and bump up to some rooms that we've all played before, but never as headliners. So really cool opportunity to do that. And I love a diverse musical pairing on a bill. I'm down to go to shows where everything tends to have like a similar, DNA, so to speak. But I'm also really into variety bills. This is a really musical and diverse and fun tour, between all four bands on the tour. So yeah, just kind of struck us as like a really fun thing to do. And maybe we can, headline some big shows, but also make some new fans in the process as well with it by virtue of it being a co-headliner too. So yeah, all signs just pointed to this being like a really fun and kind of unique thing to do. And the timing was great and the guys were really friendly. And yeah, that's kind of how it all came together.
Awesome. So if you don't mind going back in time a little bit, you grew up in around Toronto, right?
Correct. Scarborough, Ontario. Yeah, just outside Toronto, or in Toronto effectively, but yeah.
Yeah. Growing up in Toronto, what were some of the bands that were big in that area around that time that really inspired you to get going?
Oh, wow. So at the time that Intervals was getting going, and even just ahead of that, sort of the stuff that I was getting into that would have been just sort of driving me towards this sound and what I'm doing now, the first band that comes to mind is Protest the Hero. Of course, with them being from a region that, people in the area effectively refer to sort of as the 905. But they're from, 15, 20 minutes outside Toronto. And they definitely like paved the way for a lot of us, especially in the like technical and progressive space. So Protest definitely come to mind, but there's so many amazing acts from Southern Ontario and Canada at large, of course. But, when I think about Southern Ontario, I think about Alexis on Fire. I think about bands like Silverstein and, maybe a band that's maybe a little bit more contemporary and close to us, like a band like Counterpart. And then there was a ton of great music that existed at that time. Fortunately, a lot of acts that are no longer. But, one of the first bands to take us on tour, we did our first cross Canada with them, was a band called Structures, Sumerian Records band called Structures, who are close friends of mine that I grew up with. And, we had the pleasure of going out with them. And then there was like some, I don't want to call them niche. I wouldn't want to limit, what they accomplished, but there was like some pretty legendary bands from the area, particularly a band called Stray Reads the Line. And there was a band from sort of like the Midwest from Canada called the Holly Springs Disaster. These are bands that were like grinding the sort of that like early touring circuit, playing a couple shows across each province and trying to get across the country and stuff. So that was the stuff that was definitely influencing me that's local. My friend Mike Stringer, who plays guitar in Spirit Box, had a band called Fallen Archaea from Vancouver, and my old local band would do shows with his, and that's how I know Mike and Courtney and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the bands from Canada and maybe more so from Ontario, stuff that mattered a lot to me at that time. My old local band, prior to Intervals, would open shows at the Opera House in Toronto with. I remember there was like an annual thing they would call the Montreal Assault Tour, and it was bands like Despised Icon, Ion Dissonance, the Plasma Rifle, Beneath the Massacre, a lot of like grindcore bands and stuff. I used to play in a pretty aggressive band before Intervals and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of really good music from the area. I probably have a little bit more of a diverse taste, and there was more things that were other acts and artists that were influencing me at the time. But you mentioned being from Toronto and what mattered to you then. Like Protest definitely is like takes the cake as far as like a band that really kind of showed me that you can be diverse and progressive and kind of not really have a lot of rules. I mean, they sort of do adhere to, there is like a through line with a band like Protest, for example. I think they're like equal parts like Propagandy, but also, like progressive, like a band like maybe Sick or something from the UK, who I found through Protest. So that's the stuff that mattered to me a lot from at that time. And those are guys I really look up to now. Luckily, very gratefully, I can say that Intervals has done, I think, between 70 or 75 shows or something with Protest over the course of a Europe tour and a North American tour. They're one of the first bands to give me a shot and kind of take me out there. We played a lot together. I also worked closely with Luke Hoskin, who the original member and guitar player in Protest, who owns Sheet Happens Publishing, who we do all our vinyl and tab books with and stuff like that. So very much, and they're also managed by my manager as well. So very much like in the family. So
yeah, that's awesome, man.
I personally love Protest the Hero. That is kind of how I discovered you guys when this website started back in 2010. We covered you guys way back when.
Yeah, that would make sense. That's awesome. I love that.
So, when you were growing up, what first led you to picking up a guitar?
Whew. Yeah, so I wanted to play drums first.
Oh yeah,
which is cool. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the drummer's having the most fun. Also working the hardest, at least for what we do.
that was my first instrument too. My dad was a drummer, so I grew up with it.
Oh, love that. That's great, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't really get my parents on side with the getting the drum kit in the house, especially if I don't think I had shown any musical prowess at that point.
Mm.
So there was no precedence. That's like putting a big loud noisy drum set in the house. If he doesn't like it, well, I guess if he doesn't like it, it's a relief. We can get it the hell out of it. I think the guitar thing came from, like, I kind of do remember the moment, which was well, I might show my age a little bit with this, I guess, but I remember my parents we got our first DVD player, and they were new at the time. And wow, what a phenomenon!
Yeah.
Live concert DVDs were like a thing that my parents couldn't believe that you could watch a live concert in the comfort of your own home. Dolby surround. Oh my goodness.
I remember my first surround sound.
Yeah.
Blew my
With
mind.
the little setup with the speakers in the living room and stuff. Yeah, 100%. One of the ones that really stuck out to me, I'm an only child, and I remember my dad got Supernatural Live by Carlos Santana live in concert on DVD.
Nice.
And fantastic recording and performance. And, they had, Rob Thomas is on there and Neverless. And it's like the whole cast of characters was on there. And it's just great, great music. And I can't say that I've ever been directly inspired by Santana, apart from just this impetus to like want to play from seeing that. And I had been taking to the guitar and we weren't doing the drum thing. And it's like, oh, maybe I want to try playing guitar. So, my dad and I went out and we got our first acoustic guitar. And I was like really resistant, wasn't really getting it. The acoustic wasn't necessarily very inviting. I remember being really small and like trying to get my arm over it.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a series of D'Addario posters that they've run for some music stores. They show an old photo of you, and then I show a photo of you now. And I managed to dig up that picture for my D'Addario rep, Andy, and it's like me sitting in the living room. Like, I'm literally, this thing is enormous, and I've got my arm around it, and I'm so awkward, and I don't know what to do with it. And I wasn't taking to it. And my dad's brother, George, is a fantastic guitar player, and I was sort of inspired there. My dad's not a musician, but he's got really great taste in music. And I came home from school one day and he was like sitting in front of like a Mel Bay book, like, like Ode to Joy or Greensleeves or something like that. And I was like, I think I was frustrated because he was kind of starting to make sounds with it before I could.
Yeah.
And then when I realized that he was getting it, I'm like, how are you doing that? And he, in a very rudimentary way, was just sort of looking at tablature and figuring out how to play these little etudes on the E and the B string. And then I started to like connect the dots on like how to read the fret on the string. And I'm like, oh, this is how tablature works. Interesting. And then I started to kind of do it myself. And then as soon as I was able to produce any results, it was just immediately like a house on fire. So that's kind of like where it started. And then I, would have progressed to an electric guitar in the house, just learning like Blink-182 and Green Day and Nirvana, all kinds of stuff like that. We would buy Guitar World magazines and I would learn stuff in the back, like Queens of the Stone Age and Slipknot. And like I'm tuning my little purple Mexican Strat down, trying to figure out how to. Yeah, it's cool. Playing a lot of Sum 41, kind of oscillating between pop punk and metal. Then I started to take it more seriously in high school. I was in a music theater high school, and guitar players, while they're a dime a dozen on the internet now, they weren't in high school at the time, especially where I went and everything. So I kind of was able to kind of carve out my own way in that regard. And the music theater director kind of gave me a shot and said, "Okay, you want to play guitar? Well, we'll give you something to do." So we did like a large full cast ensemble performance of like a really large, almost Broadway-esque rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody for like a high school talent show kind of thing, like a variety show. Yeah, they put me in a wireless pack and I'm playing the solo from Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm up in a catwalk somewhere in the back of the stage. It's crazy. And I'd never done anything like that and couldn't do it with a purple Strat. So my dad took me to the store. And at that time, I think I was, graduating into deserving maybe something a little bit more professional. And School of Rock was popular at the time. So I wound up with a cherry red SG Standard. And I played that thing forever. And I went from, playing Bohemian Rhapsody to learning like Anti-Flag and strung out songs and, playing like punk stuff. And then, yeah, just kind of like when I found, for example, Protest the Hero, just to bring it back to that, then I realized like, oh, this is an amalgamation of all of those things. It's metal, it's punk. And that's what really spoke to me, and I just learned all that material as much as I could. I absorbed it all at that time, throughout high school. Started playing in for my first local band with friends and stuff. And that's kind of the beginning. But the thing that really I remember just sparking my interest was sitting in the living room watching a live concert DVD with my parents. It happened to be Supernatural by Carlos Santana. There were a bunch of other great ones at the time as well. We got some G3 DVDs. I was starting to discover like virtuoso guitar playing at that time. My dad got this wonderful DVD. I still watch it on YouTube. It's unbelievable recording. And like I said, my dad's not a musician, but he has exceptional taste in music. For him to put me on to Matheny at that time as well, it's like I was hearing these things on drives in the car, really understanding this like modern jazz stuff. And it's interesting. My dad came from born in 1950 and seen the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin live and all this stuff, and he kind of was over like aggressive rock music or anything with an edge, and sort of felt like he had maybe missed out on some other things and was getting into some more contemporary jazz, and George Benson, Lee Ritenour, Pat Metheny, this type of stuff. And then when I started playing guitar, I think he realized like, oh, I missed the grunge era. So he started getting into Nirvana and stuff like that. And that's where I was sort of like, I'm into the pop punk stuff because I'm young, but he's exploring sort of the stuff that he missed. And I was taking an interest in. He thought Kurt Cobain was so amazing, and as do I. So I was getting into that, and those were sort of the early drivers as far as my journey with guitar.
For sure, definitely touched on it briefly. What was joining the local scene like when you found yourself as a competent guitarist joining bands and stuff like that? What was the scene like?
Toronto scene was amazing at that time. It saddens me to think about it now. It's changed a lot, almost non-existent in my opinion, which is a crying shame, to be honest. Because at the time it was I'm sure that's not unique to Toronto,
unfortunately.
Although I will say though, we spend a lot of time touring in America, and we get to cities, and I feel like something's still alive and well in a lot of these places.
Yeah, there are plenty of little pockets where you can find like really, really rich. Like we're down here in Florida. And down here, like really heavy music is huge. Like huge. In the Tampa area, huge. You can't go.
Love that.
You can't go to 3 bars without hearing at least one metal band.
That is accurate.
I love that. We used to have a lot of that in Toronto, and there used to be a really thriving scene when I was sort of outlining some of those early bands. Like it was very much alive and well. Played my first legitimate show at a multi-venue set up in downtown Toronto called the Big Bop, which is no longer, and it contained a venue on the bottom floor called the Cathedral, and upstairs was the Reverb, and these are places where not only did I play my first like legitimate rock show at the Cathedral downstairs, I would have seen so many of these bands we've come to tour with now, or bands that I look up to. I remember seeing Between the Buried and Me play Colors from front to back in that room. Insane. I remember seeing opening for Veil of Maya, The Burial, and like all these bands, my old local bands upstairs at the Reverb, and saw I Wrestled a Bear once. Back I think it was pre-Courtney actually, but back in the early days. So anyway, as far as the Toronto scene, there was a lot of really great bands at the time, and there still are. I don't mean this as a slight to anybody who is actively pursuing something in the city right now. I just remember when there was like a real true sense of camaraderie. I remember when you could go to a venue on a Friday or Saturday night and it was all locals with a local headliner only, and not this like we're the cool band that gets the opening spot on tours when they come through, and just this like, which is also rare these days too, changed a lot. I think Toronto's a really interesting place because while it's responsible for some really incredible music, and Ontario specifically, like we're home to, would it be like the big 3 in like contemporary pop? It's Bieber, Drake, The Weeknd. I mean, like
that's true.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it's Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, amongst others. Amongst others, we have an incredible microcosm of music from the city, but very diverse and not rock and metal. So it's there's not as much of it. Yeah, I sort of miss that. Whenever we have an opportunity, for example, we had an opera house gig from our first tour back post-COVID that out of 30 shows, 29 of them were all executed perfectly. And that final show, that final hometown show, got punted because of impending restrictions and the city shutting down again at that time. It was the end of 2021. We had to punt that show to the following following fall. It took a while to get back there. And as a result, we weren't dragging around the same tour package and stuff. So I was like, I want to put bands on. And I think it'd be really cool. We already have, most of the rooms sold.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in trying to like drag up, like at that time, Thank You Scientist was the direct support on that tour. We're going to bring them up to Toronto for a one-off. Doesn't make sense for them. Like, let's put on some bands,
Totally.
Wherever the opportunity exists, I'm into it because I really do want to see more of that. I just wish that go to a venue on a Friday night and see, 3 or 4 local bands playing with a local headliner.
Yeah.
Because, I just wish that this scene would just like sort of, support and cultivate something like that. I haven't seen it in a long time. So maybe that'll change. But some of those smaller and more like seminal venues don't exist anymore. And that's like a really big part of it. You need those rooms. Yeah. We still have Sneaky D's. And we still have, the Hard Luck Bar and Lee's Palace. Like there's places, but there's this strange gap between like 250, 300 cap room and then the big stuff. And you know what I mean?
I totally hear what you're saying. I think Tim can attest to that too.
Yeah.
Tim was around in like the 2010s. Starting this website, which used to be a zine company, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a lot more venues back then. He tells me about it all the time,
especially in St. Pete.
Yeah,
they're all gone.
I've only ever played the State Theater in St. Pete's.
It's
played
closing down.
The Hero, actually. Oh, no way!
Right?
No way.
Which one?
State Theater.
I think so. Yeah.
Wow, that's a shame. Well, we love the area. I mean, we adored Tampa. We've always done shit and gigs at the Orpheum. Just played the new one with Tesseract.
I've played the Orpheum a few times. It's a fun one.
Yeah. The chickens running around in the parking lot in the back. And, we love that. And the new Orpheum was great. We were just there with Tesseract. It's a fantastic show. We've only got one Florida date on this upcoming tour. It's at the Orlando House of Blues at Disney.
Awesome.
Which is, for people hearing it, if this is coming up March 22nd, there may or may not be tickets left. Because that's the front runner on this tour. It's selling really, really well. And very much looking forward to a show there. I've had the pleasure of playing a few times. We were just there with Spirit Box. We were also there with Animals as Leaders. Been there with Sean in Between the Buried and Me. Good times. Really,
I saw
really
Between the Buried and Me there. It was packed.
Nice. Yeah. It's amazing. We're about to have probably one of the tour highlights there. We love playing in Florida. And my beloved merch guy, Greg, who used to drive for Interval, now sells merch for us, lives in Tampa as well. Got a little connection there, and we love it. Love playing down there.
Well, I got one more big question for you, and it's something that I've always been interested in hearing about because I'm a little young to know what the MySpace and the Bandcamp scene was like truly.
Okay.
Like I can totally go on Bandcamp now and see what's happening on Bandcamp, but I wasn't there in like the modern baseball era of Bandcamp,
I like your syntax here because we're talking about the old local scene and then we're talking about MySpace. Like this is legitimately where Intervals came from. We used to flyer telephone poles to promote shows. Like I still feel like the MySpace days weren't that long ago.
I was wondering, so what was it like going from the MySpace Bandcamp era and how has that changed now that we have Spotify and TikTok and Instagram and everything? Like how has your interaction with social media changed?
Yeah, so Bandcamp's still totally a thing, and as an independent, we still use it. I think that Bandcamp felt like less of a community and more of just of a cool place to put, lossless music. I think for audiophiles, people who consume, FLAC and these lossless file formats and stuff like that's really cool. It's still a great place. Like some people really like consuming music that way, buying, the music. We love that, so we utilize that as an independent. Mm-hmm. MySpace was it was a unique place, honestly. I really felt like it mattered a lot. I still think to a lot of us earlier bands, like bands I came from at that time, it really did. Very nostalgic in my mind. But the advent of things like Instagram, Facebook, etc., sort of eclipsed that. And then now you have the democratization of music overall through streaming, which I was resistant to. I remember when The Shades of Color was coming up, which wasn't that long ago, at the end of 2015, I remember thinking, do we wait? Do we let the whole pre-order campaign and sort of the lead up to the release And before we put it on streaming, it was like this idea like we need to safeguard everything and direct everyone's attention in different directions before we like succumb to putting it on social or on streaming platforms. Like it was sort of like this weird evil thing that I was resistant to. And now it's like you're not on day one. Like, you know, so it's really changed a lot. You know, I remember a few years ago also being resistant to Spotify being the front runner in that space. And I was an Apple Music guy and, you know, still utilize both platforms, of course, and consume music in various ways. But now I see the merit in what Spotify is doing. And I really like a lot of aspects of that. And now we really, you know, tend to prioritize what things look and feel over there. So it's changed. It's changed a lot, but you know, streaming is great. I think that people who are resistant or maybe have a bad taste in their mouth might have their wires crossed on that. I think that, you know, not to be blunt, but that might be an indictment of your ability to engage people because the world is on there. And I think it speaks to your product and your presentation if you're not able to engage. I also love that we exist within this progressive and instrumental microcosm. You know, I think that that's great because there is community over there. And I think that the way the algorithm puts you in that sort of, you know, down that rabbit hole, I think it's really good. My friend Rick Beato recently has been speaking on YouTube a lot about like maybe the algorithm is sort of siloing people into, you know, like you might not discover new music because the algorithm is continuously taking you in one direction. So you could argue that maybe for the diversification of the taste of the listener, that might not be so advantageous at the same time for those who are, you know, for a young would be or can be musician who's coming up and you're really hungry for this kind of thing. And you listen to an interval song and then you find X band in the genre as well as a result. I think that, you know, rising tide raises all ships, right? So like, I think that's a really good thing too. Just depends on how you look at it. We're in a new era for music, but I don't think there's anything to be afraid of. I think that it's all about how you do your business. And I think it's about how you present your product. And if you're confident in the art that you make and you present it in a way that's professional and has like a really strong sort of, you know, vision, then again, it goes back to, it's all about the art. You know, a lot of people want to strategize and talk about like, well, how do we make things happen? You know, what is it? And at the end of the day, it really does boil down to if you have all your ducks in a row and it's not happening, then I think it speaks to the art. So it's a crazy time. I get asked this question a lot. Like, you know, if you're just starting out now, what would you do? I have no idea. Very fortunate to have had a decade-ish now, just over, of experience. And we put our roots in and became, you know, a household name in the genre. And that definitely helps us stand up. And now we're just navigating the modern music industry like everybody else. I always just say that the music needs to be the focus. And regardless of all the social strategies, tactics, marketing stuff, I think the music is paramount. So
thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Of course. I appreciate it. It was a good chat. We got to touch on some stuff that don't normally talk about on things like this. So I appreciate you engaging me on some stuff like that. And cool place to shout out the tour that we're starting. Starts as of right now. We're a few days away from launch. But like you said, when this drops, we'll be in LA. Brand new record. Couple singles streaming right now. Mnemonic came out in October, which is the leading track from the record. And Neurogenesis, which is track 1 from the new album, will be out and streaming. Music video on YouTube. Pre-orders are up now. Intervals.com, INTRVLS.com. You'll be able to find everything that you want there. New record out in May. On tour with Hail the Sun on a co-headliner across America, March, April. And then on tour in support with Mammoth WBH. And for a 9-ish shows in May. And lots more coming, you know. Whole new album to drop in May and lots of touring and everything. So if everyone's interested, you can check me out on Instagram at Aaron Intervals or INTRVLS.com and you'll be able to find everything there.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you have a great day, man.
Hey, Rumble.
I heard Weezer just announced a tour.
30-year anniversary of the Blue album.
Yeah, man. That's an incredible album. Very important album.
Very much so, yes.
I'm definitely going to try to go.
The rest of the bands excite me just as much as Weezer with The Flaming Lips and Dinosaur Jr.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome.
I have been dying to see Dinosaur Jr. for a long time. And
yeah.
3 bucket list bands, 1 show.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm about it.
I've got a friend who already got tickets.
Already?
Yeah, he's subscribed to this like email thing or whatever, so he got an announcement about it early and stuff. And
All right, I'm just going to call it out. Was it the Wheeze Lord?
Yeah, it was Charlie.
Charlie, you're lucky if you're listening.
Yeah, dude, I really want to go. I think they're playing closest to us is Hollywood. They're playing at the Hard Rock.
That is a small venue.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising, especially considering they're playing at an arena the night before.
I wonder how many thousands of dollars I will have to pay to get a ticket to that, because I would really like to go to that one.
I doubt it'll be thousands. It'll definitely be hundreds, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So check out the tour dates. See if there's anything near you. If you want to see, Dinosaur Jr. I really want to see Dinosaur Jr.
Flaming Lips, dude. That stuff gets very immersive.
For sure. So just the other day, there's this movie theater near here that does Mystery Movie Mondays, where they'll show a movie that's about to be released like a week early if they get permission. And they do it I think like twice a month or something like that. Just recently, I think it's out now. Yeah, definitely. I saw this movie called One Life, which is a remake of an old movie, which is it's a movie that tells the true story of this guy named Nicholas Winton, who was a broker from London during World War II. And he single-handedly ran this rescue mission to get a bunch of mostly Jewish children out of Czechoslovakia before the Germans could close in on them. It was pretty intense, man.
Sounds like an emotional story.
Oh, absolutely. It was like history movies can be a little dry, but the heavy parts were heavy, dude. Parts of it were pretty rough. It had a pretty happy ending. He did a lot of really good work with that mission, and a lot of kids were alive because of it. And there was this really cool scene at the end where he's like old and stuff, and he goes on this local daytime talk show in London. He got invited, and he was in like the studio audience. And then they announced that like the person sitting next to him in the studio audience was one of the kids he saved. And then it was like everybody in the studio audience is one of the kids he saved. It was a super emotional moment.
I would have cried.
Yeah, could you imagine?
I mean, I would have cried in the movie theater.
Like in the theater?
Yeah, I'm a baby.
Yeah, it was emotional. Great movie. So absolutely go watch that if you haven't by the time this comes out.
Speaking of movies, they are remaking the cult classic movie from the 90s, The Crow.
I've heard of it.
They've made a lot of spinoffs. Not much success after Brandon Lee died, obviously, but with Bill Skarsgård as the new one. The trailer dropped just yesterday, so it'll be 2 weeks or so old by the time this drops. I don't know, man. I'm very on the fence. The original was just so classic to me, and like part of me growing up, just changing the way the character aesthetic looks a little bit. It's not hitting the notches for me. I'm going to go watch it just because I want to know.
For sure. I need to watch the original. I'm like familiar with it, but I've never actually watched, sat down and watched the whole thing. So I definitely need to do that. And then we'll go see it together or something.
Right on. And then talk to you guys about it.
Yeah, totally. All right. And now I think it's time for the discovery. On today's episode, we have Southwest Florida skalternative band Neverless. All right. What's up, TJ? How's it going?
What's up, guys?
So we got TJ Collins here from Neverless, a band here in sort of our region of Florida, a couple hours away, but sort of nearby relative to some of the other people we've interviewed.
The Southwest area,
Southwest Florida. So how did Neverless start?
Yeah, so back in 2018, I was playing in a band called Summer Survivors at the time. That was cool. It was another person's project, so I was kind of just, playing music for the sake of the project. I was actually singing and playing guitar and stuff at that point. I'd started off on drums, and then I moved over and started singing and playing guitar. It was a whole long thing. But anyway, so that band kind of came to a close, and I wanted to do something different. That project was like reggae rock or ska or whatever you want to call it. I wanted to do something heavier and darker. So Neverless kind of began as a thing in early 2018. Myself and the drummer from Summer Survivors kind of split off, and it was my idea to form the band, and he was in on it. He wanted to play and stuff. So I had some darker songs written. Like I said, I think some of the first songs that we ever made come to life were, Stomp was one of the first ones. Red Light was one of the first ones. Stuck in Place was actually a song from Summer Survivors that made its way over to Neverless. So yeah, those first few songs that we came up with were kind of like the blueprint for the band. And Corey was very much a part of the band from the beginning. In fact, he's the one that I approached him with the idea. I'm like, hey, I want to make a band and I want there to be horns. How would you feel about playing either trumpet or saxophone in the band? And he was like, yeah, I'm all for it. Let's do it. So Corey kind of helped found the band. And from there, I asked that one guy that was playing drums at the time if he wanted to join, and he did. So we had a little band going. We found a bass player shortly after that. And yeah, that first iteration of Neverless was a thing. I think like 2020 was where we kind of shifted gears and brought Drew in and Q and Sam and kind of had a different lineup there for a minute. But yeah, that's kind of how the band started out and has gotten to this point. I'm not sure if I missed anything in there, but yeah.
Not sure if you missed any bass players along the way.
Just one in particular that may so happen to be on this podcast right now.
Oh, no. For Tim?
I mean, I do play bass.
Tim does play bass.
We've kind of gotten to a point where we've done some really cool things. We put out an awesome album, but the band's kind of shifting gears once again and heading in a different direction. I think it's really going to be more of a solo project going forward. I mean, I wrote all the songs for the band, and it's pretty much my little passion project. It's gotten to a point where I think it's kind of just going to be that going forward, just writing and releasing music and maybe playing shows here or there. But yeah, kind of where we're at right now.
Right.
More of an artistic project than a band, if you will, at this point.
For sure. Tell us about Reggae Rise Up.
Yeah. So Reggae Rise Up was super cool. Let's see. We are not a reggae band whatsoever, as you can gather from listening to our tunes. So it was really cool to be on a bill with, some different style artists for once. I mean, we play a lot of punk shows. We play some, a lot of rock shows. That's pretty much it. So being on like a reggae bill was really cool. We got to open up, play on the same day as some of our idols. I mean, Sublime with Rome was performing, and they're, huge for me growing up, listening to Sublime and stuff. Wiz Khalifa played that day, which, I'm not the biggest Wiz fan, but that was still really, really cool in itself. I mean, guy's legendary. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I can't really remember all the bands that were playing. I know Pepper played. Pepper's really, really cool. Tropidelic, I think, played. They're awesome. The horns and stuff. Yeah. That was Reggae Rise Up was a dream come true, man. That was really, really cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, sounds like it. Did you get any like star treatment at any points where it was like, oh, holy shit, this is like official?
Oh yeah, totally. The whole time. I mean, we had like our own little RV for the day that we got to hang out in, and yeah, so it wasn't even like a green room. It was like we had our own RV, kind of like being on tour, but not having to go anywhere for the day. Yeah. Catering all day and stuff. You get to hang out backstage with all the bigger artists and stuff. You meet whoever you want and shoot the shit with just about anybody that's there. It's really, really cool. Such an awesome experience. I hope we get to be back someday. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, you said earlier about Sublime being like a big influence for you. What were some more of those bands that really got you playing music?
Totally. Real big bands for me.
I thought you were about to say Real Big Fish.
Same. I was waiting for it.
I was ready for that.
Hey, they're up there. No, so like major influences for me. RX Bandits is a really big one. A band called Mad Caddies up there for me. They kind of do they almost have like a ragtime kind of punk feel in some of their music, which you'll hear a lot of in this next upcoming batch of songs or album or whatever you will that we're about to put out. Anyway, so, I mean, not that we sound anything like them, but other bands that really, have been inspirational along the way. And Mars Volta is a really big one for me. Boingo Boingo is a really, really cool band from the 80s that I love that kind of helped shape the Neverless sound a little bit.
Danny Elfman, right?
Yep. Yeah, Danny, probably more so Danny Elfman than Oingo Boingo is a huge inspiration for me. I love what he does. Anyway, let's see. NoFX is one of my first favorite bands ever, and they still are to this day. They are way more punk than we'll probably ever get, but still a really big inspiration. Like a lot of skate punk bands from the 90s and 2000s and stuff. Lagwagon, Pennywise, Bad Religion. Those are all really big for me. From there, I kind of started to get into prog rock and like some older stuff. I remember getting into like a lot of like Jimi Hendrix and the Moody Blues and like some older progressive stuff. And from there, I kind of expanded and just kind of listened to whatever. Yeah, it's kind of how the musical journey's gone for me as far as inspirations go.
Yeah, I remember a lot of those band names from the tour van.
Yeah, I probably played the shit out of a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of tour, not a lot of DIY bands get to tour because it is very expensive, especially when you did what we did when we went, all the way across one side of the United States. I was wondering, what were some of your favorite moments from that tour?
Man, so many good times. First of all, just being out there on the road is such an experience in itself. I mean, being out of town, being in another state and having a reason to be there, especially being like artistic in nature, you're out there doing what you want to do, living the dream. There's something special about just being on the road. So honestly, the shittiest day on the road is better than the best day, at
Stuck
home.
At home, yeah.
In my opinion. Some of the specific moments that I really enjoyed, New York was insane. I mean, I'd never been to New York. I don't think you had either, Rumble.
No,
I don't think
I hadn't.
Anybody in the band had been to New York. So just, rolling up on the city and seeing the skyline and stuff for the first time, you come over the New Jersey Turnpike Bridge or whatever, and then you see the city in front of you, and it's like, man, we're here. That's it.
Pretty incredible. I remember you waking me up. You're like, Rumble, wake your ass up. Look.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you got to sleep in the back most of the trip.
Yeah,
Lucky
it was awesome.
you. No, but New York was the highlight for sure. I mean, exploring, downtown and the city and stuff was awesome.
Sam buying a $15 beer at Times Square.
Yeah, I hope it was good.
Yeah, I hope that Heineken really hit the spot.
Ohio was super cool. West Side Bowl was.
Yeah, that place was awesome.
I mean, that was probably the coolest spot that we played on tour for sure.
Yeah.
If you're ever in Fayetteville, Ohio, you gotta stop by West Side Bowl. It's such a cool place.
It's a bowling alley. It's a bar. It's a venue. They got
arcade games.
What's up?
They got arcade games.
Oh, they got arcade games. They have a whole downstairs area where they let the touring band sleep.
Yeah,
dope.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yep. It's great when you're, in a van for 3 days straight and you don't want to sleep in there again. And
yeah.
And they're like, hey, we have a place for you to stay. And you're like, oh my God, we'll be there as soon as possible. We didn't really have that many like really, really cool moments on tour. We kind of grinded more so than anything.
It was pretty day after day. Yeah.
Yeah.
All business.
Well, DC was cool. We went to DC and
yeah.
Were we in the same group that day?
No, you guys went to when 3 of us went to Philly. Drew and Sam went to DC, and then it was a whole thing. I'm pretty sure Drew got to go to DC twice because I went with Drew.
Yeah.
But DC was incredible. I did get to see the Smithsonian. I think you guys went to the Smithsonian as well.
Yeah, man, the Smithsonian was dope. That was that's what I was gonna say. It was really, really cool.
It was really weird, that one part of the tour where half of the band was like halfway across the coast.
Yeah, we got split up quite a bit there. Yeah, Drew had his own car, so he got to take whoever he wanted that day on little mini adventures throughout the tour.
We all got
side quests.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Side quests.
Yep.
I'm curious. Do you have any pieces of advice for other touring musicians?
Rumble had.
I had some in episode 1, but I'm curious to see what you have to say.
Your do's and don'ts for touring, DIY touring.
Sure. Yeah. So, do prepare for anything. I mean, you never know what's going to happen when you're 1,000 miles away from home. So, be ready for anything. Bring in extra of whatever you need. Like, I have a medication I'm supposed to use, and I did not bring it. Well, I brought it, but I lost it. It's like Anyway, so I had to drop ship a whole, fresh bottle of that from home, and it costed like an extra $150 to drop ship it. So That always sucks. You're running low on funds when you're out on the road anyway, so you gotta make sure that you're not gonna spend any extra money on unnecessary shit, which involves forgetting to pack an extra of something. So definitely bring something to, keep yourself busy. Don't just expect to sit in the car and veg out for 8 hours a day and not get bored and, kind of lose your sanity a little bit at times.
Yeah.
Um,
That drive straight from Florida to New York was a little brutal.
Yeah. Yep. So, bring a book, bring something, whatever you do to keep yourself busy. Make sure you got something to do. Definitely bring money. Try to bring as much money as you can. Being on the road nowadays is hard. It's very, very expensive. I think bands back 20, 30 years ago had a huge advantage because it wasn't so expensive to live back then. You could just go out in a van and, get by on making $100, every couple nights. But nowadays it's not easy. You gotta be well prepared financially. Let's see. Don't get mad at your bandmates. Try to keep a cool head. Don't lose your shit over things that don't matter. There's going to be some tense moments along the way. So just choose your battles wisely. Think about if it's really worth bringing up and making a stink over, and vice versa. Try to be considerate of others. If there's something that you're doing that you think might get on somebody else's nerves, just take it easy. You're all sharing a living space and trying to, make it home in one piece. So be considerate. That's the biggest thing. Don't be a dick.
For sure. I think all of us had dickish moments at least once or twice on the road.
It brings out the worst in people.
It really does. It's grueling.
I mean, we really didn't have that many. Well, maybe Rumble says otherwise, but I don't think we had that many. I really don't think we had any huge fights or anything.
We never really had anything that we let fester. Usually, if there was an issue, we found a way to squash it pretty quick.
Right. Yeah, that's all you can do. Is be adults. Don't be immature.
Yeah,
I think that sums it up pretty nicely.
All right, so I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but what does the future hold for Neverless as far as new music and what future shows might look like and stuff like that?
Yeah, man. So the future is cool. I'm excited. I have always wanted to get as creative as possible with this project, and I think the opportunity that I have right now lines up perfectly with that mindset. If you stick to something long enough, I feel like you'll get where you want to be. My music career I've only put out one album so far. So I got a lot of music left to write, a lot to put out. The next step is recording it and putting it out there. I will say, I love having a band to play music with. And that's always a really cool experience. And I don't regret for a minute, making this a project that involves other musicians early on. But I think it's just going to be smoother process, creatively getting the music out, not having to worry about shows and stuff, quite as much, and just kind of focusing on the creative side rather than the performing side.
For sure.
Doing what you can with what you have, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's all we can do, right? I think that's the motto of the DIY musician. Do what you can with what you have.
Absolutely. I'm going into the studio here in the next couple months to start what will be a 12-song album. I'm putting that out as soon as possible. Probably, realistically 2024, so early 2024. I'm sorry, 2025. Yeah. We're already 2024, man. Time flies. Looking at another album by then. And then, so this next album is going to be just kind of one-off songs, nothing special. And then what I've got planned, I've already got a whole nother album written and ready to record and stuff after that. So I'm kind of way ahead of myself as far as writing goes, but I guess that's a good thing. It's better than the alternative.
Yeah.
But that next album, so I'm putting this next one out, right? And that's just one-off songs, just nothing too crazy. And then after that, I'm focusing on doing a concept album, and it's going to have a whole space theme to it. So trip to space, I guess. So that's what the future holds.
Does that mean we have to wait a whole nother album before we get Geronimo on Spotify?
Or is that on
okay?
That one will be on the upcoming album.
Thank God.
Yep. Hands Up is another one that will be on the next album.
Oh yeah, that one's good too.
I think those are the only two that that All the Way Down.
Ooh, that one's fun. All of these references will make sense once the album comes out, but that won't be for a while.
Yes. So everybody watching, you'll have to come back and watch this episode again in like another year.
Yeah.
You can pick up on all the...
We'll have you back on when the album comes out.
Oh, sweet. All right. I'm down. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, TJ.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Hell yeah. Don't forget to check Neverless out on all social medias and on Spotify.
You know it. Thanks, guys.
See ya. And now here's Stuck in Place by Neverless.
Well, I'm sitting in the middle of a one-way street, no turning back. And I'm feeling like a crazy train derailed from the current track. Cause I'm sitting in the backseat thinking of the front seat point of view. And I'm trying to get my head straight, gotta come up with something new. By now you think I know this ain't the right way to go, but I can't find my way back home. All alone and left for dead, the clutch burning in my head can't push me into gear, so I'm stuck in place. Where till I go, moving way too slow, and I've lost my way. The one thing I know is that I need a tow because I can't stay. I broke down and time won't last. I had the whole world running up my ass. Call a taxi cab and save me from this place. This place. By now you think I know this ain't the right way to go, but I can't find my way back home. All alone and left for dead, the clutch burning in my head can't push me into gear, so I'm stuck in place. Oh, yeah, yeah. By now you think I know this ain't the right way to go, but I can't find my way back home. All alone and left for dead, the clutch burning in my head can't push me into gear. By now you think I know this ain't the right way to go, but I can't find my way back home. All alone and left for dead, the clutch burning in my head can't push me into gear, so I'm stuck in place. No, I'm stuck in place.
All right, for today's episode of DIY or Die, we're talking to our good friend Will Birdwell, owner of the Raven Makerspace and doer of many things, about how the DIY creator can use social media. All right, what's up, Will? How you doing?
Hey.
So for our DIY or Die segment today, we're talking about DIY people and using social media to promote your platform. You are somebody who knows a lot about that, so I figured you could shed some insight.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I own a business now, the Raven Makerspace. It's a community hub for music. Certainly, our ability to do anything is kind of on the engine of social media and word of mouth. So a while ago, I learned some kind of high-level tricks about how the algorithm works from some really talented and people that are in the know. And there's really like four main categories of how this algorithm works. And it comes down to relevancy. And I don't mean relevancy like is it relevant to current times? I mean, is it relevant to you? Like, what are you about, right? So you guys being a podcast, and I'll use you as an example, you're a music and culture and gaming podcast, right? So the moment that you talk about anything that's not music, culture, or gaming, for example, if you post a cheeseburger, it's considered by the algorithm to be just extremely irrelevant. Even though it might be the most beautiful cheeseburger you ever post, it's irrelevant to your topics. So Facebook or whoever nerfs that, right? The second category is affinity, and that's how many people do you relate to based on the interests you currently have within a certain social group, right? So affinity, and I tell people all the time this, and it freaks them out because it's 100% true. But like, for example, using you guys again, I like certain things about music and culture, and you like certain things about music and culture. So for example, and I'll just use Tim because he's in the background here with the Star Wars stuff. Tim and I both have an avid love for Star Wars, right? I have Star Wars tattoos all over my arm, right?
Yeah.
So the affinity portion is where you and I are standing near each other, and Facebook knows, and I say Facebook just because it's the top one in my head, but all the meta and any algorithm product, it knows what your habits are, right? So now naturally it's going to show you the same things that I just like. So if it showed you, Tim, a Star Wars thing, right? Tim and I have at least some sort of degree of separation, even if we weren't friends. Now it's just going to by default shotgun those same Star Wars things to me, loosely related to Tim. If we're friends, that relationship goes up even further, and so that affinity gets weighted more. So that's the second way that you can do social media engagement. The third way is going to be the quantity in which you post, right? You have to be consistent about it across the platform. So like 5 out of 7 days a week, if you're on Facebook or Instagram products, realistically, you got to be posting something at least once a day. That's just the nature of, you got to play their game. The last piece of the puzzle is your physical location and proximity. So I don't know if you remember a while back when they had Foursquare, but there was a whole thing about like swarming a location. That technology has evolved, and now geolocation and geofencing is a thing, right? So going back to our same example, you and I are out somewhere, and maybe there's a new Star Wars coming out. Every time you or I walk near a movie theater, phone's going off. Why? Proximity, okay? So all 4 of those categories, if you multiply them together, and I say multiply, it's not like real math, right? If you're factoring all of those against each other, it's going to then start to influence the way and the style that you post. So for example, a trick that I learned from a business owner recently that is very successful is making bullet points and ending with a call to action. So how can you do that as like a musician, right? Okay, you have a new release. Instead of just saying, hey, this new release is coming, why don't you engage them emotionally, right? How does a song make your audience feel? So I'll hit you with like Side Piece, just because that's a music I'm familiar with, right? It's my band. Mm-hmm. So Side Piece, we try to make it dancey. We try to make it very bass heavy. And it has that, political, cultural satire attached to it of the hardcore world, right? Mm-hmm. So in that context, right, I'm going to put bullet points like, do you like it heavy, right? Do you want to feel the bass pumping through your taint, or something silly like that makes people smirk and laugh like you're doing, right? Why? Because they're going to remember that statement, okay? Yeah. And then things like, it's music for 2024. It's current. It's now. It's talking about the struggles of today. That's those bullet points, right? And then what's the call to action? So if you feel like this resonates with you, if this is a message that you're speaking daily, hit my pre-sale or pre-save link. And let me remind you that pre-saves help every artist of yours that's your favorite, not just me. Boom. There's a post that's really easy to make, and you can kind of tailor that and repackage that at least 3 or 4 times throughout a whole month, right? Boom. I just gave you a post a week regarding your upcoming release. It's that simple, right? You just have to find ways that is going to resonate and connect with your audience. In terms of leveraging social media to get them to do something, remember what social media is for, right? And I know that's a weird question to say because, we think of social media as like our evil overlords with the algorithm and, the cyborg automaton Zuckerberg is going to come and eat my children and all that, right? But that being said, it was designed to connect people of like-minded interests, right? So play into that, lean into its original strength of people with like-minded interests. And I say that in the sense of you need to collaborate. You need to find other pages that are of similar interest and topic, and they are not your competition. They are your collaboration because they always will have a different audience than you. They might have overlap, but they have a different audience than you. And what people don't understand as the owner of a social media page or as, you know, the driving force behind like an artist or an organization or a band or whatever, is that people are buying, clicking, streaming, choosing to support people, not a product, not a brand, the people behind it or the mission statement and cause behind it. And I say mission statement or cause because obviously big corporate brands, it's hard to attach a face, right? But people identify with the culture attached with a corporate brand. You know, there's a massive and distinct difference between Target and Walmart. Walmart is what Walmart is, and everyone knows what Walmart is. Target is what Target is, and everyone knows there's a very different vibe between the two, right?
Right.
So, but they're both department stores, yeah? They both have humongo client bases. So you as a band, you as an artist, it does not matter if someone else is playing the same music as you, even if to the point of where they rip off your same riffs. Who cares? It's going to be different people listening because inherently different people buy in for different reasons. So collaborating is always going to just be the better way to grow your base infinitely faster. You're going to have people that actually give a shit about your content because it's relevant to them. Why? Because you're already collaborating with people they like. If you collaborate, if you're trying to throw something new at them, they're not going to care, right? How many times have you looked at an ad and skipped it? Everyone's guilty of it, right?
Yeah.
But how many more times have you chose to check out something because a friend showed you?
Way more.
It's true.
Right. And so when you collaborate, you're also taking advantage and leveraging an implied trust that exists. Trust is important in brand building, right? If you don't have trust, the customer or the client or the listener will never do what you want them to do, whether it's buy a piece of merch, click stream, or pull up with a ticket to your show. If you don't build that trust, then they will not give you what it is that you want from them, right? So the implied trust is already there because if, for example, I already love Sincerely Yours and Sincerely Yours says, you got to go check out Rumble and Friends. Oh my gosh, I'm immediately going to check out Rumble and Friends. As opposed to if Rumble and Friends comes across my feed, I'm probably going to scroll by it the first couple of times, maybe the first 5 times even.
Yeah.
It may not be until the 7th or 9th time, and that's a proven statistic. 7 to 9 times it takes an interaction before someone makes an action on a brand. I'm learning all sorts of crazy stuff these days. You can shorten that length of time by using that implied trust. Build relationships with other artists. And they, in turn, that leverage of trust is going to take your art further. So that's the biggest things I can say about social media is, you know, play their game, learn how the algorithm works, and understand those 4 categories are really all you need to hit to make your stuff visible, to make your stuff show up often, and to be actually getting engagement. And then secondly, collaborate. Collaborate until you can't collaborate no more. Like, find every single person or artist or whoever that's willing to cross-post with you and do it because that visibility is infectious. And that's pretty much like that's the short and simple of social media. I mean, aside from the obvious, you know, make videos and photos. You know, if you're gonna have a photo, make it pop. If you're gonna have a video, make it fun or make it worth watching. Yeah. Right? The visuals are important, but honestly, it's the mechanic of how the algorithm works. Those 4 things I talked about, and collabing because it's a social network. It works better when it's 2 or more.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure.
For everybody listening, tell them a little bit about the Raven.
Right on. The Raven Makerspace. It's a community hub for musicians and other artists. We're changing the way that you can take your idea to finished product. We've got rehearsal space, recording space. We now have DIY shows that you can book yourself, throw, and make your own money on. Of course, we have the pro shop. We stock strings, sticks, and drum heads and all that good stuff. And we got a whole lot more on the way, including large performance venue for Pasco. So we're working hard to make Pasco and greater Tampa Bay area and beyond, have an anchored place where musicians can feel celebrated and get their work done.
Right on.
Awesome.
And you can check all that out at www.ravenmakerspace.com. Thank you again, Will.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Don't forget to check out all of our social medias at Rumble VS period the Airwaves. And don't forget to check out New Fury Media and www.thenewfury.com.
Also, we got some stickers, Rumble versus the Airwaves stickers. If you want some, we will gladly mail them to you. So if you email us at rumbleversustheairwaves@gmail.com, we will send you some stickers.
All righty. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.